All right. Hello and welcome everyone to the Together Digital Power Lounge podcast. I am your host, Amy Vaughan, and I am the Chief Empowerment Officer and owner of Together Digital. We are a diverse and collaborative community of women who work in digital marketing and advertising, who choose to share their knowledge, power, and connections. You can learn more about us at www.togetherindigital.com. And this week, I'm excited to invite you all to sit down and have a chat about money and optimizing your personal finances with Jessica Chen. Jessica, I realize I didn't even ask you how to pronounce your last name. Can you do it for me?
Realfie.
Realfie. I don't think I would have butchered it too bad, but just in case. Jessica is the co-founder and the CEO of Uprise. Uprise is a VC-backed startup that builds personalized financial plans for young professionals for free and is trusted by employees at Google, Microsoft, Deloitte, and among others, those you might have heard of. Long-term, Uprise is working towards making private wealth management accessible to everyone. I love that idea. I love that mission. Previously, Jessica led product management at Robinhood, Earnin, Wise, and started her career at eBay and JP Morgan. She graduated from Dartmouth College and Harvard Business School. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really glad to have you here and excited to talk about money with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
And you make such a great guest because you've got this duality of being a female founder, which we always love and appreciate, leveraging, tech platform to help democratize something like wealth management. And a woman especially, who's able and willing to talk about money in a way that is informative and empowering. So first of all, thanks for all the work that you've done and continue to do.
Appreciate that. Sometimes it's helpful to be reminded, take a step back of hey, this is hard work and it's important to be fighting this fight. So I appreciate you saying that.
Absolutely. Yes, you are doing very important work. All right, so let's get to it. Uprise. You are building a private wealth you're trying to work towards building private wealth management for all. And you are backed by founders and execs from Stripe, Robinhood, SoFi, Cash App, and more, which is phenomenal. You evaluate each customer-specific situation to deliver a personalized financial plan completely free, which just sounds awesome. Can't wait to start. On average, each plan has found over $1.5 million to add to each consumer's lifetime net worth. $1.5 million to each. Not overall, each of you, your lifetime net worth, which is amazing. But let's start with your story first, Jessica. As I mentioned, we're a fan of you and the work you're doing for so many reasons. I wanted our listeners to hear from you. How did you come into this role and where did the idea for Uprise come from?
Yeah, totally. So my background, you've thank you so much for sharing a bit of it. I think I've been in basically consumer fintech. Before starting Uprise, I was in consumer fintech for some time. So Robinhood and Earnin. Earnin helps people who are living paycheck to paycheck make ends meet between paydays. And then before Earnin, Wise, I was an early employee at Wise. They do international money transfer and really made that much cheaper, much more accessible, et cetera. So for me, coming to Uprise was very much a result of what I saw at these previous companies. So at Robinhood, stock trading app, what do I buy? Was the number one question from customers. What stock do I buy? I don't know how to do this. And at Earnin, it was, how do I break out of this paycheck to paycheck cycle? And while all of these incredible consumer fintech products in their own respective spaces, they couldn't help people with those questions, because you need to know a lot about the person, where they've come from, where they're trying to get to in order to answer those questions well. And I think this resonated a lot for me personally. So I have a lot of questions about my finances. But I think even more importantly, my parents are immigrants, and really had to figure this stuff out on their own. The stories that my mom tells about not speaking English, not knowing how to navigate a job interview, like really starting from scratch. And she eventually went on to work for the FDIC. So in Washington, D.C. is where I grew up, and really close to the financial system. And so she really pounded into me from a very early age, go open a bank account. This is how you should think about it. But even like, so I go to her for all of my personal finance questions, but she's also there to like, I remember like to watch out for me, even when I don't know I should be watching out for myself, right? Like I remember I was in grad school and she gives me a call and she goes, Jessica, max out your Roth IRA this year. And I was like, okay. But then you only realize later that, oh, my income is low this year, therefore my tax rate is low this year, therefore this is the exact right time to contribute to a Roth IRA, and really get the tax advantages of this. And so like, as I was working in fintech and just seeing these questions that people had, it's like, wouldn't it be nice if I could somehow like scale my mom? And like, I work in technology, there's got to be a way to be able to help people who aren't as lucky to have a mom who knows this very well, and make it available to everybody. So that's for me. We have a small team, and each of us has really like personal stories and connections to this. And so I think that's one of the reasons why it's been so fun to work on it.
That is amazing. I love it. How do I scale my mom? That's a fantastic backstory. I love it. Because yeah, I mean, the issue of finances and money, it is really like how we handle it gets handed down from our parents and or caretakers. It's how we were brought up. If it was an abundance mindset, a scarcity mindset, there's so much wrapped into how we feel and think about money. What an awesome thing to have a mom like that. So kudos to your mama.
I tell her that she's the reason that I decided to start Uprise, and she's like, yeah, I know. She's cool with this.
Sounds amazing. Oh my goodness. All right. So I want to back it up for just a second and help our listeners who are here with us and curious about optimizing their personal finances. Why is wealth management so important? Maybe even give us a little bit of what it means. And really also, I guess, well, let's go there first. What is wealth management and why is it so important?
Yeah, the way I think about, I think when people say wealth management, frequently people think investments. And I don't think about it this way. I think this is a great question, because I feel like it's what I described. It's like somebody who's in your corner who will look at your finances comprehensively. So investments is one component of your finances, but then there's also like from everything from like building credit, paying down debt, looking at your employer benefits and like what should you be doing there, to thinking about retirement and goals that you have in your life, and even budgeting if that makes sense. So like the whole thing. And I think the way we describe what we do is kind of like, we'll meet you wherever you are. So it's not like we're not going to like overwhelm you with like a whole bunch of stuff. It's like whatever makes sense for your specific situation. That's the recommendations that we'll make. And I think your question also gets a little bit at like the macro of like, why is this important? Why is like personalized financial advice important? Like one of the things that throughout my time in fintech, and maybe just part of getting older, you come to realize more and more is like the world is not fair. Mm-hmm. And one of the worrying trends in the United States specifically is this widening wealth gap. Mm-hmm. So if you think about, there's some research that the Pew industry has done, which shows like basically the share of wealth in the United States. In the 70s, it was like 60% went to the middle class. 60% was held by the middle class. Today, that number is like 40%.
Wow.
It's crazy how much it has dropped. It's like a linear line. And then where has that money gone? Not to the lower class. The lower class has kind of been consistent in terms of its amount of share of total US wealth. It's all gone to the upper class, the top 1%, the top 0.1%. And it's stark. It's like basically it's now the upper class has more share of wealth than the middle class. And if you think a little bit about why that is, it's about access to the right knowledge. It's about access to the right investments. It's about access to the right people, all these kinds of things. And so for us, one of the things that we think is really important is to make that knowledge, make that advice accessible, access to investments even, or whatever it is, accessible to as many people as possible, and really try to reverse this trend. And it's like my idealistic self, which is like, how do we make this world more fair?
Yeah. I love that because, yeah, exactly. I think that those who are not so affluent, wealth management does feel and seem a bit intimidating. Are you guys finding that with like you're kind of breaking into a new space and trying to provide something like this? And what kinds of things have you heard from folks?
Definitely. I mean, it's one of the hardest things, which is like we're competing with non-consumption. The alternative today, right? Like so many people say, well, I don't have that much money. Does it make sense to work with somebody or some service or whatever? And I think that's the biggest thing that we're trying to change. We're changing people's mindset and making something available that wasn't previously available. And so that's one big, I guess, like before you sell the product, you have to like help people understand, oh, it is possible. Even somebody who doesn't have a ton of money should have access to something as premium as a personalized advisor.
That makes sense. And that's a big challenge, non-consumption. Yeah, you're not competing against anybody. You're just competing against the lack of knowledge that something like this exists, which is why I was so excited to have you on here. And I'm excited to have all of our guests here and listening. And I hope that the word of mouth continues to spread, because I do think that's another part of it, right? Is word of mouth, people leveraging it, using it, seeing the benefits of it, understanding it, feeling comfortable with it, and then sharing it with others. So hopefully you all give it a try and do that. To help Jessica and her team out. So in the United States, the average Black or Hispanic or Latino household earns about half as much as the average white household, half as much, and own only about 15 to 20% as much net wealth. How is Uprise being modeled to support these underrepresented groups?
Totally. And I think this is like directly following on from, the previous question in terms of like, you mentioned this, a huge part of wealth generation is that community that you were born in. It's your family. It's those like, it's the habits and the practices. It's the mindset. And I continue to believe it's a big part, the network of knowledge, the network of people that sort of like set you on a trajectory. And so therefore, if your family isn't already knowledgeable or knows the right things, I think the biggest challenge is like people don't know what they don't know. That's the piece to like get over. And like, if you even know, okay, I should be asking these questions, that's already a huge step. And I shared my story about my mom, but my co-founder came to this space through a slightly different angle. So he grew up with a single mom who worked in retail, and he told me a story that really resonated with me, which was like, he said, there was this day when my mom came to me and said, I can't figure out this money stuff. And she handed him a book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, at the time. I think he was in high school. And he was like, she was like, you figure this out. And that is already like a step, right? Like, okay, I know that I don't know these things. Right. And the next step is like, how do you get access to that? So the way we think about this is that it's like giving access, high quality advice. Our plans are free. A really meaningful component of our product will always be free. I don't know if you guys know the app Duolingo, language learning, the owl and everything. I really like their business model, which is like the educational content in that app will always be free.
Yeah,
it will have. And so like the idea for Duolingo is like, they will teach English to a lot of people in all parts of the world who don't have access to English language learning capabilities. And so, or like places to do it without a lot of money. And so they're democratizing access to English learning. They have ads, if you could pay a premium to remove the ads, but the content of it is always going to be free. And I've been very inspired, I think, by their path to monetization and making a business, even while making sure that, the core of it is free.
That's amazing. I agree. I love Duolingo. So for these underserved communities and underrepresented communities in most cases, what are some other resources that are available to them in case those who are listening fall within those spaces?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of programs, financial literacy programs, and this kind of stuff out there. And I think it's just a matter of, like, if you're really interested to go and take advantage of those things. I think the traditional resources are really around, like, books, personal finance books, Nerd Wallet. Now, after things went online, it's a lot of content. I think nothing like Uprise, which is actually personalized to you. But if you have that interest in this kind of stuff, like, I definitely recommend a bunch of books that I love, and this kind of stuff too.
That's great. What are your top 2 recommendations on books then?
Anything by John Bogle, so the founder of Vanguard. I think the Little Book of Common Sense Investing, I really like. And then Ramit Sethi's I Will Teach You to Be Rich.
Okay.
Look,
Awesome.
I mean, that I don't like that title, but like, the content in it is very, very good.
Well, because again, I mean, it's about creating security, right? It's not always about getting rich. It's about creating stability and security for yourself, for your family, regardless of what happens. Whenever I think about money and I have somebody in my family to look up to, it was my grandmother, who was a waitress for 40 years, and her house was completely paid off. If it was over $1,000, she paid cash for it. She had, several money market accounts, and, she just knew how to take care of her finances and was able to do so much when our family was in need, even though they were generating more wealth than her based on their income, but weren't managing it in the same ways. That she had that stability and that ability to even be there. So it's not even just for your own safety and security. Sometimes it could be for your families as well. So yeah.
Wow, I love those stories.
I know, she was such a badass. Well, and then after she passed, we were going through all of her stuff, and I realized, I mean, on top of just making her waitress salary, not only were all her bills paid and, everything taken care of, the stuff around the house was always well maintained. On top of that, she donated 25 to 30% of her earnings almost every year to different charities. And I was just like, to be able to do that was very inspiring. So it definitely got me to kind of look inward and start to try to figure out ways inward and with our own finances, how we could start to do that. Because it was just such an impressive thing to see again. So yes, you don't have to be rich to manage your money well and create security.
Yes.
And give back to the world. Thanks, Grandma. She's hanging out here behind me. Actually, I can't see myself. Here's a picture. This is an old one. I know people on LinkedIn or on LinkedIn and our podcast can't see, but where's my grandma? She's always looking over my shoulder behind on my desk. All right. What are some common misconceptions we have about our personal finances? And what are some common money mistakes we all make? Let's talk about the other side, the non-Pats of the world. That was my grandma's name.
No, I mean, like, your grandma's like the perfect example of, like, so I think the biggest mistake, this business honestly is like so much of, like, the mistakes that I previously made, or things I wish I knew when I was younger. I think the biggest mistake is the flip side of what your grandmother did, which is so many of us let our money, our finances just happen.
Yeah.
And we're not deliberate about it. And, like, this was me. Like, despite the fact that I had a mom who was, like, really good at this, like, in my 20s, I was just like, well, my savings account, I think it's going up. Yeah. Like, I didn't really know, but it wasn't like, I mean, it's good in the sense that it's not going down. But it was far, far, far from enough. And, like, if I think about all the mistakes that came from that, it's like, I didn't think about the future. Business, like, I ended up going to business school. That's really expensive. And then, like, I didn't save enough. And so then student loans are a drag on your finances into the future. Another example of this is, like, oh, my company offered a 401k match of, like, I don't know, 2-3%. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to match. I'm going to do the match. that's far from enough. And now I realize, man, I undersaved for retirement and I missed out on years and years of tax savings and investment compounding. And even just things like as you grow older, like life gets more expensive, and like paying for a wedding or having a kid is very expensive. And so I think the biggest part is not taking a driver's seat, or like not thinking about thinking about the future. How do I want this to unfold? What might I want my life to look like? I can go into more detail in terms of like practically speaking, like how do you do that? But I think that's the one from which all other mistakes come from.
Gotta fall out. That makes so much sense. Oh my gosh, I feel called out. Like you just let your finances, you let your money happen to you. It is so true. And I think a lot of it is inherited from, for me growing up, my dad was an immigrant and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. So we didn't have tremendous access to wealth. So I definitely have more of a scarcity mindset. But then even to this day, both of my parents still kind of just let whatever happens to them happen, and they don't think ahead about, like you were saying, like saving for the future, retirement, all of those other things. And where does that come back? Who does that come back to? Me and my sister and my brother.
You are there. Yeah, there. Exactly.
Right. And so it's like knowing that it really inspires me and encourages me to show up and to do better this time around, now that I know better, so that my kids aren't in the same situation, that I teach them better, but then also don't leave them in the lurch of my bad financial decisions or lack of just making any decisions at all in the past. So I think that that's tremendous advice. Thank you for that. All right. So what are 3 key personal finance practices that we all need to start embracing, like right now, if we're not doing it already?
Yeah. So, I mean, it follows on directly from that, which is like it doesn't take very much time. It's take like 30, 45 minutes. And you say, grab a cup of coffee and you sit down and you say, what do I think my life will look like 5 to 10 years from now? And like, this could be like career. Where do I want to be from a career perspective? Will I want to buy a house, or maybe a vacation home, or a boat, or send my kids to college, or go to grad school myself? Whatever it is, like, what might that look like? And I think this is an exercise that like maybe people don't stop their day-to-day, like short term, I got, to actually think about this. But in reality, it doesn't take very much time. The other thing was, I was always afraid of doing this exercise because I was like, well, I'm not going to save for a wedding if I'm not even dating anybody right now. But like, practically speaking, probably you will get married, probably you will have kids, this kind of stuff. It's okay to have some sense of where you're trying to get to, knowing that it's okay for it to be fuzzy and for things to change in the future. Just having a sense of the future allows you to start like moving forward. Versus if you didn't have any sense and you kind of stay stagnant. That's the idea. And once you have that, then it's like, well, you could like price those things. The things that are expensive in that vision, grad school or house or whatever, you can say, oh, okay, I want to buy an 800K house in 5 years. Let me work backwards. Now I know exactly how much I need to be saving every year in order to get there. There are calculators online that make this very easy. And then you can even like, okay, you have that number, how much I need to save every year. You go to your paycheck and you like set up an investment account, and you literally from your paycheck to the investment account never hits your checking account. You never even see it. And it's just automatically working towards that goal. And so that's kind of like the three things I would say is like in order. There's so much research that says like having goals, like multiple times higher returns, that you would get multiple times higher returns by having goals. Also, people are more likely to hit those goals. Also, there's some reports of like you have lower depression and higher happiness. And so like having savings goals in general just makes a lot of sense. And like I say all of this, knowing that like no one's going to do this. Like very few people are actually going to do this, which is one big part of why we built this into Uprise, which is like, it will help you do that, right? Like you just need to tell us what you want, and then we'll calculate all this stuff and like tell you
that's so cool. Because that was my next question, is like, how does the technology that you guys provide with Uprise kind of help with these things? That's awesome.
Exactly. It's like the first part is is like the tooling, like, okay, we could calculate these numbers and figure out exactly the right accounts, because you're supposed to, like, for example, if your goal is like 2 years away, it should be, you should align your investments to be less risky, more cash. And if it's 10 plus years away, then it should be more risky, et cetera. And so like, we'll literally like from your goals be like, oh, this amount of money in this account, this amount of money in this account, and then invest it this way, right? And then the second piece is like, I think apps and technology can also help you know that this should be done in the first place. I'll give another example of, so have you heard of this app called Superhuman? It's an email client. It's an email client, and like their value prop is like, they'll help you get through your inbox faster. And so basically, they have a lot of keyboard shortcuts in the email client. It's like beautifully designed and this kind of stuff. But the magic of their product is actually they have a methodology for like how to go through your inbox. Like they'll say like, you should get to inbox 0, therefore will save you meaningful time. You don't feel anxiety over the thousands of messages in your inbox. So it's like, it's a methodology first, and then the tooling like helps you do that. And so I think for us, it's the same way. It's like, there's this methodology that will make you wealthier, and then we'll build all the tools to enable that to happen as easily as possible.
That's exciting. Yeah, I don't know why you wouldn't do this. I think, like you said, I mean, there's that not just the financial reward for the future, but the emotional reward as well. You know, when people feel like their finances are under control and they know what's there, there's so much less worry, anxiety, guilt. When you're spending something, you know, you have the money to spend and you're still saving money for other things versus it just kind of looming over you. So I think that's fan-freaking-tastic. I wish everybody, I'm sure everybody listening is going to sit down and do all this stuff.
Yeah, this group definitely will.
That's so awesome. And I wanted to give a shout out to the folks in our chat, because they also added some, those who are live audience are listening, added to the chat some additional book recommendations. So David Bach's Smart Women Finish Rich, another David Bach book, The Latte Factor. If you have no background in finance, Get Smart with Money is a Netflix documentary. So if you're not up for reading, apparently that's a good one to watch. So yeah, those are great. Thank you all for sharing those. And yeah, Julie dropped the link for superhuman.com in there. I'm excited to get into the puppy and try that out too. I'm going to sleep so much better. Why people
if you could get rid of your inbox, totally. Yeah.
Oh my God, that would be amazing. Would absolutely be amazing. All right. Well, we're going to have lots of time for questions, listeners. So make sure that you drop them into the chat or be ready to come off of mute here in a few minutes because I've got one more question for Jessica, and then we can move to our questions. What is your hope for the future with Uprise and other democratizing platforms like it?
Yeah. I've been in fintech for a while. I'm still in fintech for a reason. It's because I am really hopeful for the future of what's to come in the financial, industry. I've been, an observer, participant in this journey of watching basically like banks get dismantled. Like, right? Like if you think about a Chase or a Citi or one of these like huge institutions with like a gazillion products, like literally piece by piece is getting taken out. It's stock trading and loans and money transfer. Every single one of these is now being taken out and set and like made better, more accessible, lower fees, all of the above. And so I think that's the future, right? When every single component of this is meaningfully better. I think there is some like lumpiness, which is to say like, how do you democratize, like Robinhood democratized access to investing for everybody, but like the advice layer, which is what Uprise is doing, like did not get democratized at the same. So then you have questions of like, how do you manage your finances and this kind of stuff. And so that's where, like we want to make sure that eventually this entire stack that like of services that rich people have access to, that everybody has access to that now. Our hope for Uprise for the future is to be a control panel for your finances. Whenever you have, we've set you up and all this kind of stuff, figured out, look for optimizations. We'll continue to monitor for optimizations as we spot them over time. but then really, you know, to be the financial assistant and to, whenever you have a decision about your finances that you should make, which account, where do I pull money from or put money into, this kind of stuff, that, you know, we can help you triage that really quickly. Oh, this, and then one click, get that done. So that's our hope for the future.
That's exciting. That's amazing. And then Megan went straight to the website, one of our listeners, and she wanted to know if it's launched yet. She said she went to the website and got the wait list. She wanted to know what the timeline was.
Yeah. So we're still in private beta. And a big component of this is like, there's on our team, Caroline is our head of financial planning. There's still only one of her. And so like she looks at every single
Caroline now.
Situation. Yeah, we need more Carolines, but basically, that's the reason why we're still in private beta. But like, if you put Together Digital or whatever in the how did you hear about us, I'll keep an eye out for that after this and just make sure, you know, to let people from this group off first.
Awesome. Yeah, she did that too. That's great. That's so exciting. Yeah, I was kind of curious too. Does the interface, all that kind of stuff? I assume it does, but what about debt? Like, how does it handle and help you navigate debt? We talked about savings a lot, but I wanted to hit on that because I feel like that's probably in some people's minds.
Totally. Yeah, I think a big component of this is like, so as I mentioned, like we'll look at your specific situation and then be like, oh, these are the recommendations for you. So for debt, the questions would be like, should you refinance? How do you stack rank your debt based on like interest rates and timing and this kind of stuff? And so it really depends. One of the first things when you go through the flow, the first box is like, what questions do you have about your finances? And so then we'll like be able to help answer those around debt or around anything else. Basically what we've built in the back is like just a lot of recommendations for specific situations that we'll spot as people come through. And so we have a lot around should you refinance, car loans, should you pay this in cash, should you shop around in advance, should you take the one from the dealer? Like there's like so many specific cases and questions around all of these things.
Definitely. Yeah. Because debt's its own bag of everything, right? And the way that you approach it, you could actually save money while paying down debt versus, paying for your higher interest rates and things like that. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting strategies and thoughts around that. So I love that you guys are offering that as well. Vanessa, one of our listeners, also had a question. Vanessa, you want to hop on and let us know what your question is?
Yes. So I'm in user experience, and I think apps regarding weight loss, financials, all that stuff. They're great. And there's all of these financial aggregators out there. Min's been around for a while, et cetera, but like, how has your company worked through bridging that gap between a digital platform and people's natural habits and the inability to change those habits? Like, automagically works until maybe it doesn't. Like, hey, can you guys not take that 500 automatically out this time because I need new tires on my car, and like, now what? So I'm just curious how your company handles like life and how that's sometimes creates friction between all these automated digital experiences.
Totally. I think the main, if I could boil this down to one thing, it's that like, yeah, I've been in fintech. These tools don't always work, right? Or they pull the money at the wrong time or whatever, and like categorize things incorrectly. So we didn't go down that path. Like, you have control. It's kind of what we say, which is like, here's your plan. We found these optimizations, but maybe we missed something, right? Like, that better than anybody else. And so it's up to you, like, which of these recommendations you want. Hopefully you want to implement all of them, but you don't have to. You can choose to implement none or all or something in between, right? And so like, we will help you implement and this kind of stuff if you want us to, but there's always control. You could always like, oh, turn this off or turn this on. This is how I think this is one of the biggest learnings I've had from like previous fintech products, like robo advisors or mints of the world, which is like, the tech is not there yet. And so while the tech is not there yet, we need to give humans control. And this is both humans in terms of the user, as well as humans in terms of, that's why we have a human in the loop for every single plan to like double check to make sure we actually understood someone's situation and this kind of stuff. So right now it's just like we give recommendations. And then you can come back and say, oh, my situation changed. We'll look for new recommendation. We'll give new recommendations based on whatever's changed then. So that's how our product is set up. It's not, doesn't force you into a automated system, if that makes sense.
It does, which is nice. I literally use this app called Balance Checks, and I just manually go in and put in every paycheck and every bill like 3 months out. And I think that concept you mentioned earlier of like money just happening to you is so interesting, because as I'm going through that 3-month thing, I'm like, oh, maybe I should factor Christmas presents into this month because I actually don't have that much money to spend after I take that out. And just thinking about all those upcoming things. And it really is like, even it's a lot of work. And it's almost like I feel like I'm living paycheck to paycheck, even though I am secure in my finances and like living within my means. Lesson learned from parents. But like, it's insane how like, even though I feel like I'm probably better off than most people, like what does wealthy versus rich versus anything mean? And then I think to your point, Amy, it's like, I don't need a Rolex or a nice car. Like I care about other things other than that. But that question of I'm horrible at seeing where I'm at in 5 to 10 years. I was like, I don't know, I might go for a walk tomorrow. And so I'm just like, but it's just interesting to see like, oh, I can think of a house that I would really like on a piece of property. And maybe and I want to travel, like I know those things. And maybe if a kid gets thrown in there at some point, I still want to be able to do that other stuff. So I think even have something like as ambiguous as that is interesting to think about. And then understanding how you get there, because I bought my first home about 2.5 years ago. My mortgage was $1,000. I was like, I want something small, manageable. I don't want to be house poor. I'm not here for that. And it was overwhelming. And maybe it's because I work at an insurance and financial company, and I just started to learn about all these things you need to be doing. And I'm like, I can't do it all. So back in May, I ended up selling it because it's not in a desirable school district. It's just, and I'm like, if I stay here, I'm gonna just keep throwing money at something because I can't not do that. I want it to be nice and what I like. So I ended up selling it, and then it was like, whoa, look at all this money I have now. I finally feel caught up on my 3 months unemployment savings. I finally feel caught up on having a nice chunk tucked away in this smart portfolio. I just threw it in with Schwab because I was like, I don't even want to try and pick my own stuff. And it was just nice to have that. But it's really hard when you're trying to own a home and travel, but save in case you lose your job tomorrow, and also save for future you. And I think when you were mentioning goals earlier, it's very interesting to understand like, what's the first thing I should do? Because there's a lot and it can be overwhelming.
Yeah. And like, I mean, a lot of like, you're clearly like the way you just describe your finances, like you're way ahead of a lot of people in terms of just thinking about the future, even like 3 months in advance. That's like really cool. But the way we think about it is like, why is there like, I take some like issue with this idea of like financial literacy. So like, why do we think that everybody needs to know what a Roth IRA is and like HDHP and HSA limits and this kind of stuff? Like, no, like outsource that. Like, like there's technology, it should be outsourced. And so I think part of what we're trying to do is like, how do we make this as simple as possible? And just remove a lot of that complexity for people when they're making decisions on things that actually matter in their finances.
Yeah. That's so great. Yeah, I like all the flexibility and thoughtfulness put in, and I think it's smart to acknowledge, like you said earlier, too, that when tech is not there, continue to educate, provide plans and advice, but then leave ultimately up to the user. We've had so many good things going on in the chat. So Jessica, before we hop off today, you'll have to like read through everybody's comments because it's all been fantastic. And I love how much all of you are sharing. We did have one more question from Megan who wants to know in terms of longevity of partnership, will it be free forever? Can it be ongoing, or is it something more a consultative experience? And then that's kind of like it, one and done, I guess she's asking. Megan, correct me if I'm wrong on any of my reframing of your question.
Nope, you got it. You're good.
Awesome. Yeah, so like how our product is currently set up today is one free plan a year. And that is our plan, like always, like a comprehensive free plan per year. There's a premium tier if like you wanted something in between, if like, oh, I'm buying a car, I would love to get some advice like in the middle of the year and this kind of stuff. So the premium tier is $200 a year. So it's not like normal financial advisors cost thousands and thousands of dollars a year. For us, we're like $200 a year. And for that, for anything that comes up in the middle and ongoing questions and this kind of stuff, it's open enrollment, tax season, whatever. And then the other thing is like in the premium tier also are like really complicated things. So stock options and this kind of stuff. So some of those topics are in the premium tier, but otherwise like the free tier is always, or the free plan is always free once per year. Our plan is to eventually look into like advertising. One really important thing for us is to make sure that like the side of the house that makes the recommendations does not talk to the side of the house that is monetizing. But we think that like we're currently today, like just recommending the best products in the market. I know that these best products in the market have affiliate programs and advertising and this kind of stuff as well. And so we'll look into turning that on at some point in the future. But right now we're entirely like customer paid. Just want to make sure that we're careful as we go down that path.
Yeah, no, I love that intentionality. That's great. And, you know, it wasn't a question in the chat, but Megan did mention something too in the chat about how we're already DIYing everything, our health, education, job searching, all of that stuff. Like for those of us who are either like, if they're freelancers, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, things like that, do you have like recommendations for folks that are paying for their own insurance, investing in their own retirement, things like that, that aren't working for a company themselves?
Yes, totally. So basically like as long as you have some income, there's recommendations around like, okay, solo 401ks and this kind of stuff rather than your traditional employer offered. So yes, and like, okay, you have to pay estimated taxes and blah, blah, blah. So
yes,
we have stuff around that as well.
Yeah, it's always the fun thing when you're in your first year of self-employment. You're like, wait, what?
Yeah. Wait, I don't get all this to keep all this money.
No. So funny, but also so stressful. All right. And then I did want to ask one more question too about investments. I'm kind of curious, like how granular do you guys get even within the premium on those investments? I think one thing I appreciated from a previous employer was then we were talking about our 401ks, like where the money was coming from and where those dollars are being matched from. They were very intentional in letting us choose to make sure that there wasn't money going to or investments going into companies that maybe we didn't align with in values.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, again, this is why I feel like the financial advice needs to be personal because different people have different like things that are important to them. And so like being able to say like, oh, I want ESG or whatever it is something that people can do or they should do or think about. But anyway, so what we do, and I want to say like actually on investments, we're fingers crossed going to get our license in California and Florida soon. So this is still to come. But what we plan to offer as soon as we do get those licenses, which are already in progress, would be looking at your asset allocation. So one of the things here is we're all in tech. Most likely people working in tech are over indexed in tech. They have too much exposure to tech, both in terms of jobs as well as your portfolio. And so, for example, looking into things like that, okay, hey, you should diversify out or whatever it is. A lot of people hold on to their company equity for too long. things like that.
Yeah.
So that's just some of the things that we'll look at. I mentioned the stock option piece too. There's like a ton around that, and should you exercise or should you early exercise, and tax implications around that. So those are some of the things that that we are currently working on building out, lining up with when we get the licensing.
That's awesome. That's exciting. So many good things to come. All right. Julie has shared up in the chat, if you haven't seen it already, where you can follow Jessica on LinkedIn. We'll also include that in the show notes, as well as where you can sign up for early access with Together Digital at Uprise. And then also our upcoming power lounges. We've got several ones scheduled for the next several Fridays. So you can check all of those out. Before we hop off, anybody else any of our listeners, anybody else have any questions? You can come off of mute or you can pop it in the chat. All right.
I do sort of have I have another question. Sorry,
Go
Amy,
for
if
it.
that's okay.
No, you're fine.
Blowing up the chat. I was, maybe it's just an observation, or maybe a statement. I'm not really sure, but I think for me, right, like we've talked a lot about like how setting goals is kind of the first place to start. And I think, thinking about my own finances, I have not been doing a good job of that, which is part of maybe why I feel like I'm freaking floundering, right? Like there's so much advice and, oh, automate. And I'm like, cool, I did that. Now what? But thinking about like in terms of the goals, right? Like I'm curious in terms of the advice that you all provide and the plans that you all provide, if there's like to Vanessa's point, almost like a sense of realism, or like what's realistic, right? Like I don't want to own an Audi or like a Tesla, I don't want to buy a house. I just want to, live alone, and I don't right now, and I'm 30, and I'd also like to buy a new car, not a nice one, but just one that isn't a 2005 Ford Fusion with body damage and 205,000 miles on it, right? So I just think like I have a lot of goals just in general, right? So I'm wondering if, you guys are going to kind of put people in their place and be like, that's all great and well and fine, but like with your income, you can only do so much, or, something along those lines, I guess, if that makes sense. Like Vanessa's point, they're not lofty goals. They're not fine, huge, big, glamorous things. They're just things that I feel like, I deserve or I want at this point in my life.
Totally. A big component of a product, I feel like also, so it's all asynchronous, but like, I think a big component of our product is like, we take the time to understand and to listen, meaning like there's space. Like, say you were going through our product, there's space to say like, these are the questions, what questions do you have about your finances and your goals? Okay, car, what kind of car? Like, when are you thinking about buying the car, or what kind of house and what neighborhood, and this kind of stuff. And so there's like, this is almost an exercise in like, okay, what does my life look like, and what are these goals, and can we flesh that out? And then we take all those things, and frequently, actually, it is the case that like, okay, you can't save for everything right now, but that's life, right? That's life in terms of prioritizing what is most important, what is less important. If something had to give, what is it? And like that, there's part of that in that journey as well. And we take all of that and we say like, okay, so this is your monthly spend today. What is possible to fit in there based on your prioritization and your like goals or ideas of what you want to spend money on. And so that's how that comes out. And at the end of the day, this is like, okay, based on all this stuff that you told us, this is what we think makes sense. So this is what is realistic in terms of, okay, what you can hit. And maybe that's not right. Maybe you want to save more, spend less, or maybe you want to slow down and actually live life like more, spend more now, and deprioritize some goals. And that's totally fine. Like, you let us know, and then we'll redo it and like send you the next version. So like, this is almost like a conversation in a way, at least the way we think about it. It goes back and forth, and it can change at any point in time.
Sweet. I love that. Thank you. Sorry, my question was so long, but I appreciate your thorough answer.
That's helpful. I think a lot of people are, have similar questions.
No, exactly. Yeah. Whatever you ask a question, there's definitely somebody else in the room thinking the same thing. All right. We've got time for one more. And Maria is asking, taken that your company is in California, would the advice be applicable in Ohio or another state?
Yes. So again, it's personalized. So for example, like we will always take your local taxes, tax rates, and down to your zip code or the house prices in your neighborhood or whatever it is. So we'll take that into account when we're like calculating the numbers. I mentioned that for investment advice, we'll be licensed in California and Florida, with the other states to come shortly afterwards. And so like that means that unfortunately we can only provide investment advice in California and Florida until we get the other licenses. But literally we envision this month by month process, and we'll keep building up and hopefully have we're hoping that we'll have most states by like beginning of next year.
That's exciting. Oh, I feel like everybody's ready for this. They're all ready for it.
Me too.
Right? Oh, well, thank you so much for all your hard work, because it is not, we understand. Again, you're in a room of friends who know and understand the space of digital marketing, advertising, UX, obviously, as Vanessa so eloquently asked her very thoughtful UX question. So we understand all that it takes. You know, it's not just the purpose, it's not just the notion, it's not the idea even, it's just all the nitty gritty to make a good experience that will serve its purpose well. So again, that's why we are just very much in awe of all that you're doing and appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing it out and live in the world.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me too. It's always great to talk to people's mind, and it's my favorite topic to talk about.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm so glad so many of you joined us today. We'll see you next week. That's it. Take care, everybody. Have a great rest of your Friday. Bye.
Thank you.